Welcome to Psychology Today, and I'm your host, Ann Morrow. Thank you for watching. This is a show about bicycling in general and specifically about bicycle safety. I hope that Psychology Today helps to inspire you to ride a bike and helps you to be more mindful about safety. We try to celebrate people in our community that pursue careers that involve bicycling or that make choices about entrepreneurial careers that involve bicycling, and those that strive to encourage other cyclists and promote bicycle safety or just support cycling. Before we meet our guests, I want to thank our faithful crew that makes this show possible, and certainly our producer, Northwest Bicycle Safety Council. I am the president right now of Northwest Bicycle Safety Council. We're working on our 2018 season of events, and you can find those events on our website, which will show on the screen periodically. So we're still working on those that calendar, but we are adding events. Bike Beaverton comes to mind way in September, so we'll certainly be there. There are many wonderful rides around the world, around our state, around the country, but typically when you talk to bicyclists here in the Northwest, Cycle Oregon always comes up as part of that conversation, and it's been a benchmark for many cyclists and on the bucket list of many a cyclist. So we're going to talk about that for our entire show, and Cycle Oregon has kind of evolved over the years and added not just to the week ride that they've had for many years, but other events as well. So we'll be talking about those. So hopefully you'll see something that maybe meets your needs, that appeals to you. So let's get started. Our guests are Monica Vacheresse.
Very nice. Well done.
If you saw her name on the screen, yes, that's it's a challenge. And Monica's an avid cyclist, and she's participated in Cycle Oregon, and I have as well. So the idea is having riders that have participated in Cycle Oregon, and then we've brought Tom Simonson, who's a representative of the Cycle Oregon organization, and so he's going to talk to us about what's going on in 2018 and talk to us about what goes on a little bit more behind the scenes, and hopefully we'll get a broader perspective of the whole thing. So we always like to know, well, welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Ann.
So Monica, we like to know a little bit about our guests and a little bit about who you are. So why don't you just give us a little bit of history about you?
Biking history or personal history?
Just your whole, no, not your whole history. Personal history.
Personal history?
Yeah, we'll talk about biking soon.
Okay, I was born in California, and I moved to Oregon to go to college at University of Oregon in the 80s. And so I kind of feel like I'm an Oregonian because I've been here for so long, but really I'm not, because I do miss the sun. And I didn't start biking until 2004. And the reason I started biking was because I was doing triathlons and trying to raise a family. I have 2 kids and working full-time, and I just couldn't do all 3 disciplines. The swimming, the running, and the biking were just not doable in my life without missing something, sleep, a child, right? So I decided that the part I liked best about triathlons was the biking. And I was borrowing a friend's bike to compete in triathlons, and so I ended up buying my own bike, and then I've just gone from there. It's just been basically my happy place where I go.
And so specifically, what kind of rides do you do most recently? You're a road bike rider?
I'm a road racer,
okay.
Yeah, road bike rider. Yeah, I do have a mountain bike. I have also competed in cyclocross racing, but I really like road biking the best. So that's what I do, and it's easy from my house. I live up by Council Crest, and there's the Fairmount Loop, and so I can just go out the door of my house and get on the loop and ride and really work out a lot of my stress.
So what is your happy place right now, like a favorite ride, or just what really makes you happy on the bike in particular?
What makes me happy on the bike would be a day like today where the sun is out. I was at work all day, now I'm here, but where it's 60s, 70s, even the 80s, and you're out on your bike, and there's some variety in the terrain. It's not just flat. There's definitely some hills. because I know that riding hills makes me a better rider. I used to not like them in the beginning. I was like, oh no, I would just dread a hill. Here comes another one. You know, kick it down into my easiest gears and take it slow. But now it's a challenge, and I try and keep up my pace and my speed and get up the hill, and then, you know, keep it up going down the hill as well. I really like going downhill. That's super fun. I haven't had an accident. You know, I take that back. I have had accidents, but I haven't had a serious one. And I have a friend, our mutual friend, Kathy, who tells me I need to slow down going down hills because of the things that can happen. But anyway, it's just being on my bike is my happy place, no matter what. Even if it's raining and, you know, I've got the fenders and the rain gear on, I still get that endorphin kick.
Well, and I haven't ridden with you a whole lot. We've ridden a little bit together, and I think I rode with you back probably when you were first getting started into it. And anyway, I think one of the things I admire about the way you ride is, to me, you're a person that rides your own ride. You don't get sucked into somebody's pace line or somebody. You just kind of, this is where I'm at today, and this is how I'm going to handle this, and this is what I'm doing today. And you don't fall into the peer pressure. And I really admire you for that quality, because not everybody can do that, and then lo and behold, they're off on the side of the road in a heap.
Yes.
So, Tom, why don't you tell us too a little bit about yourself and how you came to be here in Oregon and that sort of thing?
Sure. I grew up on the East Coast, was born on the East Coast, moved around a lot, lived a whole lot of different places, New York City and Atlanta, Los Angeles. I've lived overseas some. I've been in Portland since 1995 with a few years overseas, but came back. Was always, when I got here, I felt like I'd finally found home. The places that I grew up that should have felt like home perhaps never really did, but once I hit Oregon, like many people, just sort of found that it was just right for me. I've ridden since I was a kid and raced on and off in varying ways: mountain bike, duathlons, road racing, criteriums.
Wow.
Was very fortunate while I was living overseas that I was able to actually, I was underemployed at the time and was able to train, and was super fortunate to have a period in my life where I was able to really ride seriously. I've always enjoyed it, and I've trained seriously, but you know, while I was working and had all those other responsibilities and time constraints, and I just felt so fortunate to have a period where I didn't really have a whole lot of other constraints on my time. The work that I was doing, actually for Cycle Oregon, was pretty compartmentalized, and I used the time differential between Asia and here to my greatest advantage. So it was great. I had a lot of time to focus on riding, and was super fit and racing and having fun, and it was great. Well, and I miss it now.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so now you're working for Cycle Oregon. A lot of times when people get these bike-oriented careers or jobs, then they don't have any time to bicycle. So is there a contrast now to?
Absolutely. No, I'm living that out. I have lived that out previously in my professional life as well. I worked for many years in the music business and got into that because I loved playing music, and then got to the point where I wasn't playing music anymore because I was working in the music business. And so I'm fortunate. I ride more, I think, than I played music. At least initially, I did actually, when I got to Oregon, found a happier medium between work and playing music. Got back to it when I was here, which was yet another thing that made me love being here. Was a little more viable than when I was in New York City or Los Angeles. So, but to bring it back around to cycling, I would love to be able to ride more than I do, but I'm fortunate. You know, one of the questions that we get a lot, like, oh, you work for Cycle Oregon, like, how much fun do you have, riding on the events? And it's like, I have fun on the events, but it doesn't involve touching a bike for me. But we do a lot of research ahead of time to make sure that the routes work. And so we do actually get out and ride them. So that, I feel really fortunate that we do have some opportunities to ride.
Yeah.
And we do get out and test out the routes to make sure, it's one thing to sort of look at it on the map or to go out and drive it, all of which are steps along the way as we
Sure.
develop a route. But it's another thing to actually ride it and realize, you know what? We need a rest stop sooner than we thought we needed it, because that hill hits really differently, or the headwinds there, or we talk to somebody locally and say, oh yeah, every afternoon the headwinds are, in September the headwinds are cranking through here, the direction of the wind. So, that rest stop that we thought was okay on the map, we realized maybe we need it a few miles ahead of time. So those are the kinds of things that we're out making sure sort of work. As we are, actually on the bikes, checking out the route.
Yeah.
So I feel fortunate. There are some opportunities to
Right.
actually still ride.
Right.
But not as many as I wish.
Always. So what's your favorite ride right now?
Good question. There's probably a couple of answers to that. Locally, Fairmont is kind of a happy place for me. I used to live over closer to there and have ridden a lot of laps up there, but it's a place where obviously there's traffic and other cyclists, but it's you still need to be mindful of safety and your surroundings, of course, but it is, I think, a little more bicycle friendly, and I just like the kind of the elevation changes to it. It's kind of like the right. I can feel like I can go and get a really good workout in a very small amount of time up there. Something about how it works and sort of my history of training up there. So that's a really great place for me. But there's so many great options for riding and dare I say working for Cycle Oregon. But in Washington, out around Mount Adams, and in that basic area and around Goldendale, there's just some spectacular places to ride. And I would say also on the other side of the river in that basic area as well, the Dalles, Mosier, up through that area. So I really love the riding that I get a chance to do out that way. And basically anytime I'm on a bike, I would say the same thing as Monica. I'm much less concerned about where I am on a bike, but if I am on a bike is kind of the answer. I mean, obviously some places better than others and some roads better than others, but we're really fortunate that we have as many places accessible to us from here in town, close into town, whether it's in Portland proper or even in surrounding suburbs. There's so many great places to kind of get yourself out of the busier suburban roads and out onto either ex-urban or rural roads.
That's true.
Relatively quickly.
It gets a little more challenging all the time, but it is still doable.
True.
So how did you get involved in Cycle Oregon? You're the operations director, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I'm operations director, but my first exposure to the event was as a rider years and years ago, but it all sort of connects up. My most recent work in the music business was as an artist manager, and a guy that I used to manage was booked to perform back in '96. And I'd done other rides. I'd done Ragbri and a few other similar rides previously, but I knew about Cycle Oregon and was super stoked to get the chance to go do the ride, because my client at the time was a super avid cyclist and had led bike trips in Europe and in the US and Canada. And so we kind of surprised the organizers at the time that we wanted to get spaces on the ride. They just kind of were thinking he'd come in and perform, but they didn't even know that he was a cyclist or that I was a cyclist, obviously. But there was this like, oh no, this is great, yeah. So we got some spaces on the ride, and so it was great to see it sort of on the inside. And I always sort of thought, I'd love to go do Cycle Oregon again as a rider, and just sort of stumbled in. A mutual friend of mine and a previous executive director were on a ride, and he, Jerry Norquist, he had said, yeah, geez, we're really looking for somebody to book music for our events. And so that sort of led me in as a contractor. And I was very fortunate that they were, that was in 2012 was my first year. And I was fortunate that they weren't too freaked out when I said, and how do you feel about it after, literally right after the ride ended? My wife had a job opportunity in Asia, and they weren't too freaked out when I said, how do you feel about me doing this job from Asia? And fortunately, they were okay with it. So I did that for 4 more years after that.
Oh, wow.
So I worked as a contractor for from 2012 through 2016, and then got offered a full-time position. There was just, sort of a perfect thing. I had shut down my artist management company when we moved to Asia, hence my underemployment. I had a little consulting work, independent, and then the Cycle Oregon work, and a lot of time to ride.
Yeah.
But was super stoked when the prospect of actually joining the staff full time.
Yeah.
So that was back in 2017. So it's been a little over a year that I've been on the staff full time, but I feel fortunate that I was exposed to the events and the people and the team and everything. So it was, I was coming in as the new guy, but not fully the new guy, at least
Nice
in terms of
transition.
exposure to the organization and the operation and sort of how things work.
Nice.
So that's a very long-winded answer to that question.
That's okay. Well, Monica, you and I have done a couple of Cycle Oregons between us, and so the classic ride, the week-long event. So why don't you share an overview of your perspective of the event as you experienced it, and then I'm going to ask Tom to kind of see if he has anything to add or kind of overlay on what you remember.
Okay. Yeah, so I've participated in 3 Cycle Oregons, but I wanted to piggyback on something that he said first about riding over on the Klickitat River and Goldendale area. And I wanted to say that the way that I trained for my first Cycle Oregon in 2005 was to ride with the Portland Wheelmen. I looked around for biking clubs because I didn't want to bike alone. I was a new rider and I wasn't comfortable. And I like the fact that they have a ride leader that you can follow, and as long as I can keep up with them. And Dick Weber, who's in his 70s and still leading rides, and still just an amazing rider in his mid-70s, was leading a ride along the Klickitat River over in Goldendale, and it was just lovely. And every time I see that on the calendar, I do that ride. It's just beautiful over there. And then I also wanted to mention the Trout Lake Mount Adams ride that they do at the end of June every year. I do that every year since they've been doing it 4 or 5 years. And now a group of friends goes with me. We rent a house. We make a weekend of it, and we do the 100. There's a 50-mile option, 30-mile, family ride, 15. We always do the 100, and it's just gorgeous up there.
Well, thanks for mentioning that.
I just wanted to get that in there. And then my Cycle Oregons were, my first one was 2005. And I trained with the Portland Wheelmen because they have a ride every day of the year. And so I could ride every day with somebody, different options all over Oregon. And then I rode with other groups too. There's meetup groups, Northwest Butts on Bikes, and Ride Like a Girl, and there's lots of groups out there. But the first one in 2005, we started in Boardman. It was like the Lewis and Clark Trail. So we started in Boardman, we went to Condon, the Dalles, Rooster Rock, Champouie, Oregon Gardens, Vernonia. They ended up in Astoria, and they took us up that hill to the tower in Astoria. I was like, really? After all this? But it was a great experience and so memorable because it was my very first Cycle Oregon. And then the next one I did, it took me a few more years before I did another one, was 2008. And that was Elgin, Union, Baker City, Halfway, which I'd never heard of, Halfway, Oregon. And I remember in Halfway, Oregon, I have this great memory of this live band that was playing music in Halfway. They had shut down the streets and opened it up like a big block party, and everybody was dancing. It's just a really great memory. And we had tea. There was a little tea place. A girlfriend and I like to have tea, so we had tea there. And then Wallowa Lake. Was that Wallowa Lake?
Yeah,
was that 2008? Yeah, that would have been Wallowa Lake. A couple days at Wallowa Lake, which is another great setting near Joseph. And what I want to say about that ride is that I am so glad that I prepared and I trained, and they have those training programs online, 8 weeks to do a 100-miler. Here's what you do, 4 hours a day, 2 hours, they set out. I'm glad that I did that because I had the energy to dance and listen to music, whereas my friends who thought, oh, I'll just train on the ride. At the end of the ride, we're in their tents, fast asleep. So the next Cycle Oregon I did was the very next year, 2009, because they went into California, which was exciting because I like variety, and to be able to see something other than Oregon and ride my bike in California was great. So we started in Medford, went to Wairika, Happy Camp, Lake Selmac, Glendale. It was a great ride. It was, though, it's 2,000 people. And so I decided to try something different, not because it's bad, just because, I wanted to do something different. So I went up to Washington, because every state in the U.S. has something like Cycle Oregon. And Washington has what they call RAW, Ride Around Washington. So I went over there and did a couple of their rides. They only have 200 people versus 2,000. So it doesn't have the amenities that Cycle Oregon can provide, like big live bands with music and dancing. But still, you get to know people, it's intimate. And then I signed up last year because I've always wanted to do what they did for their 20th anniversary, which was that route through the Mackenzie Pass and Sisters and Crater Lake and Diamond Lake and all that. But as we'll talk about later, that didn't happen. I was really disappointed. We kind of did our own thing and did a Newport, went down to Newport, rented a house, and a whole group of us just kind of did our own rides out of Newport.
It's good you could be flexible and just kind of do your own thing.
Yeah. And I am very appreciative for the past memories and everything Cycle Oregon does, and I just consider it a charitable contribution. It's fun.
Yeah.
Because I support the organization.
So Tom, what would you say? What would you add to Monica's descriptions about Cycle Oregon as a whole?
Well, I guess I would add a few things just for folks that might not have experienced or know about kind of the finer details. We pride ourselves. There's, as you said, loads of different events out there, and many of them have differing models. I mentioned Ragbray in Iowa. Their model is a little different than ours in terms of you have a lower registration fee, but nothing is provided. Basically, you're paying for everything. You're paying for your breakfast. You're paying for your lunch. You're paying for snacks on the road. You're paying for showers. You're paying out. And having done that, and kind of keeping track of the amount of money I was spending, our model, and there's no right or wrong, just different events sort of do things different ways. But our model is that everything is provided. There are some add-ons you can buy. Unfortunately, we can't provide all the beer and wine for free, but it's not stadium cost beer either. We work hard to keep it affordable. But for your registration fee, everything is provided: hot showers, meals, mechanical support, help on the road, SAG vans, medical safety, mechanical, as I said, law enforcement. You name it. So it's, again, different events are sort of structured in different ways.
Sure.
But I do think that that's a piece that bears mentioning, and that is certainly not unique to Cycle Oregon, but again, because of the differential of how different rides are pulled off, we like to make sure people are clear that what they're getting.
Yeah. Well, and those are good points because, like Monica said, there are club rides, there's meetup rides, they're free, essentially every day. But these event rides, whether it's Cycle Oregon or just, a Pioneer Century or whatever, what do you get when you pay for it? And you're right, you get the support, you get the porta potty, which is important.
Yes, it is.
And they have hot showers,
yeah,
which is lovely, and you don't have to carry anything, right? If you get up in the morning and it's freezing cold in Condon and there's ice, and you can put on your little booties and all your warm stuff. At the lunch stop, you can drop it, strip down to just your shorts and your jersey, and they carry the stuff back for you.
And that happens often.
And they have that service that sets up your tent for you.
Yes.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Again, just the idea that yes, there are free rides, but if you're paying for it, you are paying for some amenities, as you said, that really make it easier for you, especially on a week-long basis, that you don't have to fiddle with, find a place to eat or whatever. And so let's jump to 2017. As Monica mentioned, unfortunately last year, 2017, it was a horrific year because there were forest fires, a lot of smoke in our area. And so I can only imagine the anxiety that you guys must have been having. You've planned for this event, you want to put on this event, but yet you're looking at the safety of all these people, your crew and the riders both. And so what were some of the predominant factors that you considered last year that resulted in you canceling the ride?
Well, I think you you named the most important one, safety, not only for riders, for volunteers, service providers, but also we were certainly mindful of firefighters and others. If we put 2,000 people into an area where then fires got worse, then they're not fighting fires, they're dealing with trying to help evacuate 2,000 riders. And again, it's not just the 2,000 riders. We have about 170 volunteers that travel with us, like dedicated volunteers with us. We have community volunteers. We have a few hundred service providers, the folks that deal with the showers and the kitchens. You know, obviously everything's mobile, so that's kind of more people, truck drivers, all, you know, so it just, the size of the crew gets larger, so safety was first and foremost. The air quality, you know, Monica, you found one of the few parts in the whole state that had air,
That's
you
what
know,
we went to.
that you wanted to breathe, basically, much less breathe heavily, you know, from physical exertion. But the other piece that came into it above and beyond safety was kind of operational impossibility for us on our chosen route. We had roads closed due to fires, so we physically could not get through. We had roads closed on our sort of alternate routes to get around the first road closures. There were more fires and more closures. And our options for moving the entire ride and event wholesale to another part of the state, also bad smoke, bad fire forecasts. You know, again, we were dealing with weather/fire forecasting, none of which looked good. And the places that we were sort of looking at, like, well, maybe we could pull it off there, got into the same situation of, okay, well, there's no rain forecast, there's lightning in the forecast in this sort of near and a little longer near term. You know, we're in the same situation of basically just this sort of tinderbox. The resources around the state were stretched so thin that dedicated to the big fires going on around Sisters and down around Brookings and near Crater Lake, that, you know, we just did not have any options that we could really make work that we felt was a responsible thing to do. So it was difficult for us, you know,
sure.
first time in 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, we had a lot of long meetings and discussions and tried everything we could to, you know, to try to rework things, but there were no real options that we could in good conscience say, you know, yeah, let's change this and go, you know, elsewhere in the state, because again, the smoke was essentially everywhere but the coast for a good stretch of time. So,
well, on a happier note, 2018. What have you gotten in store?
We have got a great ride in store, and I can say that from personal experience. The aforementioned, you know, sort of survey ride that came up earlier that I was talking about. Had a chance to ride this. I've ridden a bunch of it independently in years gone by, so I kind of know these roads and have ridden them a number of times. But then on our survey of this specific route, all stitched together, is just spectacular. There's some pieces that you experienced in 2008, Monica, but we are starting in Baker City and going from Baker City to halfway. And on that day, we've got something kind of new where we're offering a gravel option. Typically, we have avoided gravel. We have had gravel from time to time where we've got a stretch of great road here and another stretch of great road here paved, and there's this little stretch in the middle that's going to connect this loop. And we get varying degrees of grumbling about it, but for the most part, people get that, like, if you do this 2 miles, it's really going to be worth it, But this is fully optional. You don't need to do it, but it is spectacular. It definitely adds some climbing on. It doesn't add many miles, but it adds, I think, about 1,400 feet of climbing. I'm forgetting, actually, off the top of my head. That's what sticks in my mind, but I may have that wrong. But it adds a substantial amount of climbing. But you're richly rewarded with views, and it's a really nice road. It is, excuse me, it's very rideable gravel. We are overnighting halfway. We'll be having the stage on the street like you experienced, so
Cool.
with music, of course. Then just an amazing ride the next day, going from halfway up over Forest Road 39 with an option to go to the Hells Canyon Scenic Overlook is a little option out and back. Also,
You have some water.
excuse me, I have a little. I'm good, thank you.
All right.
Pardon me.
Sorry, you're doing all the talking. We'll take a break here real quick.
Sorry about that. But it is totally worth the extra effort to go up there. It's just spectacular view. And a number of descents that are followed by climbs. And we honestly don't try to do this, but it happens on a semi-regular basis where we have a lunch and then there's a climb right after. So we have that a couple of times on this year's route. But it is a richly rewarding route, and not least of which rolling the last few miles along Wallowa Lake with the mountains in the background and the verdant green of Wallowa Lake State Park at the end of the road. So we'll be camped there. Next day we head for Elgin. There is a gravel option that day as well. Also a little rougher road, but still very rideable and also rewarding in terms of views and experience. Also doesn't add a lot of miles, does add a little climbing. And we will be overnighting in Elgin, then Elgin to Pendleton, and that's actually one of those views.
Oh, okay.
Not from the gravel, but you can kind of look back to that from above on the gravel, which is just spectacular. We head for Pendleton, where we'll be 2 nights on our what we call layover day, and this is while Roundup is going on.
Oh my goodness.
So we'll be riders will have the opportunity to enjoy the Roundup rodeo, and the next day is our option day. If you want to ride, you can. You don't have to. It's a loop out and back since we're overnighting 2 nights in Pendleton. Really nice loop out on some quiet farm roads and along the old Highway 30 along the Umatilla River. And from there, we head for La Grande, and we go up and over old Highway 30 on Cabbage Hill, which is a spectacular climb. Long, but totally workable, never really gets particularly steep. It's nice, you can kind of find a rhythm and just keep going, switching
Are they
back.
going to be on the freeway on 84?
No, not at that point. We will be above 84, looking down on it, basically. We do have a stretch on 84. There's one piece where there is no paved roads that connect where we need to get to La Grande. So the shoulder is wide there, and some of it is downhill, so it goes by pretty quickly. And overnight in La Grande, and then La Grande back to Baker City where we started, which is another beautiful ride. You're looking up at the I'm spacing on the it's not the Elkhorns, but up towards Anthony Lake ski area, and the mountains along there near Baker City, and across kind of the farming and ranching land outside of town.
For beef eaters out there, I remember they had the best tasting beef in Baker City. They used like the local cattle in there when we were having dinner.
See, I had some great beef in Halfway that I still remember.
Man.
And we work hard to do as much local sourcing of our both produce. Meat is a little harder, but we pull that off whenever we are able to, as well. But regional as well, Northwest, but as local as we can be.
And I know that too. We're obviously carnivores. Not everyone is, and so you have options for people. So you don't need to.
That is true.
You don't need to do that if you don't want to do that. So, so we've talked mostly about Cycle Oregon Classic. And I'm going to go to our video now, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the 3 other options that Cycle Oregon has throughout the summer that you might be interested in. But I'm sure that the photographs and just the description of the event itself has gotten you intrigued. So when we come back, we'll talk about the Joyride and the Weekender and the Gravel Ride. And let's go to a safety video now, and we'll return with Monica and Tom. Thank you.
Bicycling is one of America's favorite pastimes, yet like everything else, it has its risks. Every year, more children ages 5 to 13 go to hospital emergency rooms for injuries associated with bicycles than with any other sport. Many of these cases involve injuries to the head. Wearing a bicycle helmet can reduce the risk of head injury by an impressive 85%. So go ahead, enjoy the outdoors, but be sure to wear a properly fitted helmet. And remember to adjust it before every ride, or you won't be fully protected. If you will be buying new helmets, be sure from the label that they are CPSC certified. If you're using an older helmet, make sure it is Snell or ANSI approved. And there are even some dual certified helmets that can be used for bicycling and skateboarding. And whether there is a bicycle helmet law in your area or not, it's a smart idea for everyone to wear a helmet. And adults, it sets a good example for the kids. Once you have measured your head and chosen a helmet, adjust the sizing pads or the fitting ring for a comfortable fit without any rocking from side to side. The helmet should sit level on your head and low on the forehead, no more than 1 or 2 finger widths above the eyebrow. Adjust the lengths of the straps so the buckle is centered under the chin. Adjust the slider on both straps to form a V shape under and slightly in front of the ears. Lock the slider if possible. Buckle the chin strap and tighten it until snug. No more than 1 or 2 fingers should fit under the strap. At this point, double check to make sure that the helmet is secure and doesn't rock back and forth. If a big yawn doesn't pull down on your head, refer back to step 5 and tighten the chin strap. And if you just can't get the helmet to fit, try another one. Remember, a helmet can only protect your head if you wear it each time you ride. If you outgrow your helmet or are in a crash, replace it immediately or you won't be protected. With your new helmet properly fitted, you can ride with the confidence that you are getting the best protection possible.
Safety video, and Northwest Bicycle Safety Council does really promote wearing a helmet, and most important, that the helmet fits on your head so that if it's called into service, it can do its job. So we're back with Monica Vacheresse and Tom Simonson. Monica and Tom are here.
There you go.
That's easy.
We've got some more cycling to discuss, and we're kind of running out of time, so we're going to talk about some other events. But so Cycle Oregon, the Classic, we talked about the week ride, but Tom, so there's other events. So tell us how this all fits under the umbrella of Cycle Oregon.
Yeah, for the longest time, if you said Cycle Oregon, we only had one event, and Cycle Oregon meant a week-long ride in September. And then about 15 years ago, we added the weekend ride. And more recently, we have added additional rides, including a new one this year called Gravel.
You got the jersey on.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So we're trying to sort of have Cycle Oregon be the organization, and the events have their own branding. Classic for the week-long, weekender, strangely enough, the weekend ride, and Joyride, our women's ride, and then Gravel.
So let's talk about the Joyride, which is a women's ride.
Correct.
And so just in general, what is the Joyride?
Well, I guess the simplest way to say it, it's kind of, we sort of present it as an opportunity for cycling and sisterhood. It's a smaller event than the Classic, so that kind of affords us some opportunities to, and it's a one-day event, so both of those afford us some opportunities to kind of have some nicer amenities. We're based again this year on the grounds of the Stoller family estate down near Dayton, Oregon, and it's an all-new medium and long route this year. We've done the ride 3 years now from Stoller. They've been great to work with. It's a wonderful, wonderful site with some amazing wines as well. But it's it's just a great opportunity. The feedback that we've gotten, the women riding love the routes. They love the vibe. Great music, great food. We have really nice food, and because it's just women, the portable toilets stay a lot cleaner. I'm not sure why, but that's what they say. So.
Well, I really appreciate, I don't know about you, Monica, but a lot of women you talk to are women tend to be underrepresented in cycling sometimes. So I'm glad that you're offering this opportunity, because sometimes they do prefer to just ride with other women.
For sure.
So great.
And hopefully an opportunity to get into cycling or group events that maybe they would not have felt as comfortable doing.
Yeah.
We're really trying to see where there are more entry points that we can offer to get more people riding more bikes more often.
Great.
So.
And let's talk about, I'm going to jump to the Weekender, just because chronologically it comes in July rather than October. Tell us about the Weekender.
Well, Weekender, as I said, has been happening for about 15 years, but it's kind of an opportunity to make your own ride. Both Joyride, Weekender, and Gravel, we build so that they have a short, medium, and a long route, and so that hopefully reaches more cyclists. You're able to kind of, wherever you are as a cyclist or wherever you are in your fitness as a cyclist, find something that works for you. But also, especially as it relates to Weekender, although I would say it's true with all of these, it's an opportunity to maybe go participate with friends that are at different levels of cycling fitness. Weekender is a good example where, you have the opportunity to start together. If Ann, you and I are riding and you want to ride farther than me, we can ride the first 15 miles together. I might peel off and do the medium route, and you're going to just hammer through the long route, and I'll be waiting back in camp with a cold beer for you, enjoying some music at the beer garden. So it's an opportunity both for families, anything from a family with kids. We've got a kids camp, but also we have a lot of families of older families, if you will, of parents and their adult kids, or nieces and nephews, aunts, uncles, groups of friends. It's really kind of make it your own event, but it's just sort of a party on wheels and back in camp.
So there's a lot to be said for the idea that as a rider, all I have to do is go show up.
Exactly.
You've done all the planning,
Yep.
you've got everything
Yep.
together. I just need to have my bike and my
Yep.
stuff. There's a lot.
Yeah.
So this is, and I know too that some people say, well, I can't do the classic because I'd be dead. I can't ride that many days in a row. So this is kind of a way to stick your toe in the water a little bit and see how this all works.
Exactly. And we also know, the classic is an investment of time, of money, of not only the time for the event, but the training time. And we know that, some people aren't able to do that or able to do that at that point in their life, and it's an
Yeah.
aspirational thing when their kids get older or whatever else. So Weekender is a chance, as you said, to get out and experience that along the way, basically.
So Monica, have you ridden down in that, it's in the Eugene area, right? Have you ridden down in there?
I have, because I went to school at University of Oregon.
yeah.
I got
Oh,
everywhere by
these
bike.
roads, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I would ride along the bike trail that goes along the river and ride over to the football stadium. And so I'm familiar. It's very nice.
It is. It's a beautiful area. And you've got, again, lots of different routes. And
Yes, yeah. So we folks arrive Friday evenings. We have music, and the beer garden is in full swing, and dinner is provided Friday nights, and then riding Saturday, and then again on Sunday, and music Saturday night as well, and music Sunday when they come back in. So
sounds like a fun weekend.
it is.
And now finally, the gravel ride.
Yes.
That's new this year, is
That
that
is
right?
brand new this year, correct.
And you've got the Cycle Oregon Gravel, October 5 through 7.
That's correct.
So what's going on there?
Well, so this is something we've been looking at, considering for a while, and as kind of gravel riding becomes more and more popular and kind of on more and more people's radar, it's something that, as I said, we've been looking at and have finally been able to add to the roster of events. This year, this, like our other events, will move around and be have different routes. This year we're going to be based out of Rears Camp in Tillamook State Forest.
Okay.
So not too far outside of the Portland metro area, which affords us kind of a cool opportunity. We're going to have kind of a chance for people to add a third day of riding. It is a weekend, 2 days of riding as the event, but we will have a place where folks can bring their gear on Thursday night or Wednesday night even, and ride out to camp. And so there's a number of options there, again, sort of short, medium, and long if you want. The short option is to take the Max to Hillsborough and ride the rest of the way out to Rears Camp. There's sort of one medium length route, kind of up and over West Hills, and a little more direct of a route, and then kind of a longer route if you want to get more mileage. Those won't be supported as such. They're not,
Right.
we won't have sag vans. People will be kind of on their own, but we'll be kind of helping connect people up to ride as a group if they wish to, basically.
So do you need a special gravel riding bike? What kind of bike should they bring?
You could ride this on a mountain bike and be happy if it wasn't a big, sort of big hit downhill bike that's super heavy. We are on gravel roads. These are not trails, but you could ride it on any bike that you can get wide enough tires, basically. So obviously there are loads of gravel-specific bikes. Cyclocross bikes. You wouldn't really want to ride it on your regular road bike.
Yeah.
There are definitely there's a variance in kind of the road quality. And some places the gravel's a little bigger and more likely to give you a sidewall cut or worse, basically, maybe just a straight puncture. If you were just on a regular road tire. So you would want kind of a little burlier tire as well for safety and control. But again, as I said, this is not, you don't need a mountain bike. You could ride one, but it's really just an opportunity to get out and take advantage of low traffic roads,
Yeah.
and kind of just a little different way to think about riding. This will be a smaller event for us in terms of numbers of people. We will have all the same amenities. We'll do music in camp. We'll have great food and hot showers and, beer garden and all of those sorts of things. But it's just a chance also for us to expose riders and others to what will become the Salmonberry Trail. So the Rails to Trails effort that's underway to convert the old Tillamook logging railroad into the Salmonberry Trail, we're going to be riding alongside and across the actual rail right-of-way. There's an area where you can see the Reliance Trestle, which is one of the bigger, higher, more spectacular trestles that eventually you'll be riding across as part of the trail. So we'll have some folks from the Salmonberry. We have committed, we've donated a large amount of money so far, over $200,000, to the effort to create the Salmonberry Trail, and have committed to an additional $800,000. So there will be folks from the Salmonberry Trail there to kind of talk with riders and help kind of share the vision and help people get a sense of just what an amazing opportunity this is going to be able eventually to ride completely isolated from motor vehicles from western Portland suburbs all the way to the beach and through spectacular areas of forest. Some amazing tunnels and trestles and river, alongside the river basically, and in really isolated, sort of country as well. So it's just a spectacular undertaking, and the payoff when it's complete will be great.
So Monica had mentioned that her payment for Cycle Oregon and is kind of like a donation, because Cycle Oregon, the organization, does give to these communities that they go through, and you have committed a lot to this Salmonberry Trail, which all these agencies, they need help. So, thank you for that, because things have happened all over our state that, too numerous to count, just because of Cycle Oregon.
Well, it is cool. We do feel fortunate. One way that it gets described is we throw a party and we, donate the beer that's left over, basically a party on bikes. We work hard both through a variety of streams to leave as much money behind in the communities that we visit as we can, both from our contracting of local groups to help out. Again, we have our dedicated core of volunteers, but we require a whole lot of additional volunteers that come from the communities, and in exchange for their help serving meals or moving bags, the football team will be helping to move bags or serve breakfast. We're making payments to those organizations. Our riders, though we provide everything they need, they like to, visit local businesses as well, and so they leave behind a bunch of money. And then above and beyond that, the Cycle Oregon Fund, which is a kind of separate entity from Cycle Oregon operational organization, has an annual grant cycle where we're making donations open to nonprofits around the state, but anything from sort of smaller things like a hot water heater at a community center to these larger things that we call signature grants, that is anything from bicycle advocacy to environmental to business development and education programs and initiatives around the state.
Well, thank you both. Monica, just to close, since you've done Cycle Oregons, what would you say to somebody that's been considering one of these big event rides? What words of encouragement might you give to somebody this year to jump into this little pond here?
I would say that I did it, and I'm so happy I did. It's become a major part of my life. It's basically my passion now to increase the number of bikers and decrease the number of cars on the road by doing that. So I lead rides and encourage people that are new to biking by doing that, and it's something that's really important to me. I would tell them that if they're going to do the week-long ride, to make sure you go online or go to the library and get a book on how to train out for it. It's just like a marathon, right? You have to work up to it. and pace yourself. So
Right. And like you said, and just kind of in closing here, and again, thank you both for joining us, that there are all kinds of bike rides, and there's information about Cycle Oregon and all these different events on your website. But there's bike rides every day of the year through these different organizations, Portland Wheelman, meetup rides, the different bike clubs around the area, to help you to train. And just the internet is great, but working with people, having conversations with other cyclists that have done these events, that can give you pointers, that can help you figure out how to train, is just invaluable. So there's lots and lots of people that have done the Cycle Oregons, that have put in the miles, that, and you're right, the idea of training, it's a much more comfortable ride, and you are up at night enjoying the beer garden and the dancing instead of conked
well,
out
and I
in
want
your
to talk
tent.
about for the friend part of it, because you can also make friends when you're out on the bike. That training sounds like it's work. It's fun.
Yeah.
You're talking to friends. You're socializing. It's a fun thing.
It's a very social, yeah, and you just plan your weekends, which are also like mini vacations. So again, just wanting to encourage all the viewers to join us on a lot of these different rides. And I didn't have a chance to talk about, but let me quickly touch before we close the different events coming up. Monster Cookie on April 29th is a metric century, great event. And then Reach the Beach on May 19th. That's a charity event, so you need to raise money for the American Lung Association, but just ask your friends for donations. And Portland Wheelman's Pioneer Century on June 2nd. And finally, the Gorge Ride. As Tom mentioned, that area in the Gorge, that's June 16th. So you start in the Dalles, right up to Rowena Crest, through the Mosier Twin Tunnels to Hood River, and then back. All well-supported rides, a lot of fun, beautiful scenery. And it'll really kind of, I think, entice you to do more and more cycling. It's kind of addictive, I guess, in a way. So these rides can be training rides for a bigger event, such as a Cycle Oregon, and just help you learn to ride with crowds, learn how to maybe use a bike mirror. Maybe you haven't gotten clip-in pedals yet, kind of just all these things, and it'll all just kind of evolve. So this is Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, and again, we're a nonprofit organization, and we'll be placing helmets on people's heads this summer. Thank you for joining us on Psychology today, and please ride safely and use signals when you're making turns so that motorists know what you're up to, and that is the law. So please do use your arm signals, your right, left, and stopping. And please join us. I lead rides for Portland Wheelman. Monica has a group of friends and leads rides. So a lot of people out there that are very passionate and will help you reach your goals and do what you want to do. Thanks again for joining us.